All right, what's going on, everybody? This is Boss Man. You got Hammer with you again. This is Extra Biscuits, the new show that we launched on YouTube. We can't fit everything into an hour on our show on Wednesday nights, so we got another one. We just started a new one with more content coming to you on our YouTube channel. And right now we're previewing all the teams going into the 2026 season. So today we're very happy and excited to be joined by David Waters, who does a fantastic job over at Gators Breakdown. David, I've been listening to a lot of your stuff going into the season, and I'm really looking forward to this one because I think Florida's a very intriguing team. So how are you doing today, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Doing good. Gators about halfway through fall camp, a season we've just kind of been waiting on with the change from Billy Napier to Jon Sumrall and all the excitement that was the offseason. Finally got a little bit of football. We got to wait a couple more weeks for first game, but it's talking about talking season.
That's right. Yeah, I feel like we just got into award season too, like the watch list season. We've gone from talking season to watch list season, and now games are finally right around the corner. So before we get fully into this today, just so you guys are aware, if you do not follow David on Twitter right now, or if you do not subscribe to his podcast, Gators Breakdown, be sure to check him out there on social media at GatorDave_GB. That is his handle on X. Does a great job covering the Gators. And then you can check out all of his podcast work at Gators Breakdown on YouTube, X, and then on Instagram. And I'll plug one thing here before we get into it. I saw the Danny Wuerffel interview. That was awesome. Absolutely loved it. So just first of all, how did that come about? And then how much fun was that to interview him? Got to be a dream come true.
Oh, it was. Funny story how this kind of turned out. So I was down in Gainesville for Jon Sumrall's opening press conference. And so we go through the car wash of Jon Sumrall speaking, and Urban Meyer's there. So talk to Urban Meyer for a second. Dave Caldwell, the GM's there as well. Talk to him. And then so I'm wrapping up, getting ready to leave and walking out of where the press conference was. And I hear, Dave. And I'm like, okay. I turn around and it's Danny Wuerffel calling me by name. I'm like, what is going on here? He was like, he was very involved in the hiring of Jon Sumrall. And of course, we all remember Florida was in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. And there was a lot of, all right, well, we felt really good about it. But in the back of my mind, I told everybody, hey, watch out. LSU is really a threat. People didn't want to believe me. They were. Of course, they ended up getting him. So, of course, when that came about, Jon Sumrall gets hired and, it's just another Billy Napier. And, it's just, this is not the guy we wanted. Look, if it wasn't Lane Kiffin, it didn't matter who it was. It was going to be a disappointment for most of Gator Nation. So, with Danny being involved in it, he just kind of wanted to get the word out of kind of how it happened behind the scenes. And he was like, hey, I'm a big fan of your podcast, so check mark for me. I'm very happy to Danny Wuerffel saying that. He's like, I'd love to come on sometime and just talk about this whole process. And I was like, sure. So 2 weeks later, we're sitting, me and Danny Wuerffel are talking about the hiring process and Jon Sumrall coming on. And then now Florida, it's the 30-year anniversary since the 1996 national championship. So I wanted to get him on again to relive that great moment there for Gators.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it was so cool to listen to that. Hammer, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's incredible. And like you said, a big check mark for you. I mean, how cool is that a Gator legend is telling you, hey, I'm a big fan of what you do. That's validation, but also just really, really cool for somebody in your position. So bravo. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. It's funny. I had a guy I worked with me, and he was like, dude, I just still can't believe that. I said, you can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Did that really just happen?
Yeah.
Super cool, man. Well, all right. Speaking of Jon Sumrall, got the new hire. There's a lot of newness here in Gainesville, but also, I mean, I looked at the blue chip ratio of this roster. It's 68%. I mean, or something like that, or maybe it's 48%. I can't remember. It's high. It's much higher than people, would think, just thinking about how Florida was 4-8 last year. And the way that Jon Sumrall talks, I love listening to this guy, and he's got the juice. So my question just off the bat is, what is the vibe in Gainesville? What is kind of the vibe around the fan base headed into this first season under Jon Sumrall?
Yeah, go back to, the Lane Kiffin storyline, Jon Sumrall coming in. he has won everything since that. Florida fans didn't really know what to expect. He won the opening press conference, and then I was the first podcast to get him on after he started doing his podcast circuit, and I think every podcast in the world, I think he tried to make an appearance on throughout the offseason. And kudos to him. He told us that at SEC Media Days. That was kind of the plan. Obviously, coming from Tulane, not a whole lot of people got to know about him all that much. They made a playoff run last year, but it was Tulane. It was okay. Well, the school we hadn't really heard a whole lot of is making the playoff, and this head coach is now going to Florida. So he knew, and also to kind of get rid of the reputation of being another Billy Napier, another coach from Louisiana, from the G5 ranks that, it's going to just be an automatic failure. Look, I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but he's not the same. I mean, when he told me when he came on back in February, he was like, yeah, I'm not the same. I didn't bring my whole staff from Tulane with me to Gainesville. There's very, very few Tulane coaches, very few Tulane players that came with me to Florida. Kind of going to your point, because this roster is very talented. And that was one thing Billy Napier did. I won't say elite, but he did really well, was put a roster together. And one reason he was fired, he was not able to live up to what we thought should have been happening on the field with DJ Lagway and an experienced offensive line last year. And we saw how good Jaden Ball was in this receiver room. Defense has been awful since 2020. He was never able to fix that side of the ball either. So, yes, it was time to move on. He had plenty of time to get it fixed. And Jon Sumrall is just kind of, go back to the check mark thing, every podcast, every appearance, he's just kind of made himself kind of endeared with Gator Nation by how he was approached, kind of a no-nonsense approach. Not so much coach speak in press conferences. He's going to let you know what he thinks. If a guy's not playing well, he's going to tell you that. If a guy's playing well, he'll tell you that as well. So I just think it's so different than what we were getting from Billy Napier. Every press conference just seemed malaise and coach speak and the same thing week in and week out. And the running joke was people just fall asleep during press conferences and you could kind of predict what he was going to say as well. So it's just, that doesn't mean it's going to work out on the field, but he is not the same type of person that Florida just got away from.
That's great to hear. So I've got a question for you. We'll just start getting into, the team on the field this year, right? I know obviously the coaching staff is new. That also includes a lot of new players. I think there's a lot of different directions you could go with this, but I'll leave it very open-ended and just ask you, for your money, what is the biggest question mark for the Gators heading into 2026 that if things are going to go well, they need to answer in a positive way?
Quarterback is obvious, but I'm going to go with the offensive line because it affects those guys as well. Like, I think with Buster Faulkner coming in, bringing Aaron Philo with him, Tramel Jones in this competition, I think pair the quarterbacks with Buster Faulkner. I think there's a pretty safe floor for what you're going to get out of that. If this offense is going to get off the floor, take that next step, I think it's going to be because the offensive line overcomes expectations. So there's a lot of question marks there too. Florida's doing a lot of shuffling at the tackle spots with transfer Egan Boyer from Penn State, who came with Phil Trotwine, the offensive line coach, a former Gator, won national championships under Urban Meyer. He's back home, was regarded as one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. Pair him with Buster Faulkner. You hope that kind of at least gets to the level Georgia Tech was the last couple of years with a pretty good offensive line, not talent-wise, but they were able to scheme up and come up with pretty good game plans to, really keep defenses off balance. You hope you at least get that. So a lot of movement there at tackle, as I mentioned with Egan Boyer. And Emeka Igorji transfers in from Stanford. Looks like they've moved him from left to right side now. Bryce Lovett, who was thought to be a guard, is now getting into the tackle mix as well. Caden Jones has played a lot of football for Florida, but Jon Sumrall this week called him out saying, hey, he's got to play like a veteran. So there's still a lot of musical chairs at the tackle spots. The interior seems pretty well set. Najee Harris has been playing the last couple of years for Florida, has started a whole lot of games. Harrison Moore comes in from Georgia Tech, so he's got familiarity with Buster Faulkner. Bryce Lovett might be the guy at right guard, as I said, or tackle spot. And then you got TJ Shanahan, who came from Penn State with Phil Trotwine as well. So your interior seems pretty safe. There's just a lot of movement at tackle, and that's going to be, like I said, if you point to what the questions are at offensive line for the questions that are with that group, it is tackle. So I think if they can really settle in, I think coming up in the week or so, they'll kind of settle on those 5 to start moving forward with at the beginning of the season. But to me, that is the biggest question mark for this team, because I love the pairing of Buster Faulkner with everything he's been able to do as an offensive coordinator. So if this offense is going to be maybe better than expected or overcome some expectations, it's going to be because that offensive line played better.
We talk about that a lot on the show. Like, as you said, offensive at the trenches, literally just go back to the old adage in the SEC. It is the trenches that win football games. And so if you are good on the offensive line, if you are good on the defensive line, that's going to give you a leg up on your competition in this league. I like, too, that you mentioned, you may not know this, David, but both of us graduated from Texas A&M. So TJ Shanahan, I remember that name. He was at A&M before Penn State. And then we kept an eye on what was going on with Buster Faulkner. Our friend Corey Burton of Locked On Vandy is his cousin, but also Haynes King. We still love Haynes King, even if so we've been keeping an eye on it and kind of have some familiarity with that a little bit. But that's a great segue, talking about the offensive line, to get into our next question, which is bring over Buster Faulkner, as we just talked about, from Georgia Tech. You've got a lot of these new things going on. You got a QB competition. So I don't think we know exactly what this offense is going to look like. But give me what your expectations are going into year one under Buster Faulkner for this Florida offense.
Yeah, you mentioned Haynes King, Buster Faulkner. Look, it's not going to be that offense at Georgia Tech. That was built around a quarterback who could, for lack of a better comparison, while we're talking Florida here, Tim Tebow-esque, an offense that can really rely on the quarterback run. But now there's a lot of weapons on this Florida team. Jaden Ball's, second team or first team all SEC as an all-purpose back. He's getting first team, second team, third team love from all around the country right now as far as All-American lists go. So you got him in the backfield, a deep backfield behind him as well. And then one of the best receiver corps in the country, with Singleton coming in from previously at Georgia Tech and Auburn with Buster Faulkner. You got VB3 returning from his freshman season out last year. Then Dallas Wilson, if he can stay healthy, likely can be one of the best wide receivers in the country. This is a really, really good trio of starting wide receivers, which bears the question, can the quarterback get it to him? So that goes to the offensive line that we just talked about. So I think, as I said, there's a floor with Buster Faulkner in the quarterback spot. I think there's offense is going to be good. There's too many weapons not to be at least okay on offense. How much do you have to scheme around the offensive line? Do you have to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands fast, or a lot of the passes around the line of scrimmage? That's going to limit it somewhat. Now, if the offensive line can give them time and get the ball down the field where these receivers can take advantage, and that's how this offense takes the next step. So I'm a big fan of Buster Faulkner. I remember, certainly hating FSU as we do as a Gator fan. A couple years ago when Georgia Tech opened up against FSU in Ireland, it was a week 0 game, so all the eyes were on it. First time I've really sat down and watched that offense, I was like, whoa. I don't know what's going to happen 2 years down the road at that time, but I'm like, I really like this Buster Faulkner offense. He's keeping that Florida State defensive line guessing and going left, and they're running right, and it's just really good at keeping you off balance. It's not a very predictable offense. So you bring that in a different style of it now, because you don't have that running quarterback. You get to maybe open it up a bit more here at Florida with the weapons you have too. So I think there's an element of the unknown that can work in Florida's advantage, especially early on in the year. But I'd be hard pressed to, not find a way for Buster Faulkner to really get these skilled players involved.
Yeah, Buster Faulkner's offense is a joy to watch. And I'm interested to see, like you said, I don't think it's going to be the same that we saw at Georgia Tech, right? And so how does he kind of mold it around the personnel that Florida has, which also, goes to, well, who's going to start? Because I think Tramel Jones and Aaron Philo also present a little bit of a different skill set. So it'll be interesting to see how, that evolves. And I think that's the mark of a good coordinator, though, or a good coach, right, is being able to evolve and play to your team strength. Not, again, as Aggies, we've seen that as bad as anybody with Jimbo, he's got his system and we're running it no matter what. And if you got the personnel, cool. If you don't, then you're going to look really bad because it's not playing to your team strengths. So that's exciting to think about, and definitely we'll be watching what Faulkner can do on the offensive side. Flipping over to the defensive side, I'm curious to get your thoughts on Brad White. So Sumrall brings him in from Kentucky. He was there for a long time, pretty consistent defensive coordinator. And I think Sumrall even worked with him at Kentucky in the past. So obviously familiarity there. On the personnel side, like a lot of this, there's quite a bit of new faces on defense. I know Cormani McClain is coming back on the outside. But like Caleb Banks and George Gums are gone off the defensive line. I think you return all 3 linebackers, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Like Jaden Robinson, Aaron Childs, and Miles Graham will be back. But D-line, secondary, a lot of new faces. Let us know what your expectations there with Brad White and kind of a new look defense.
Yeah, you said it. There's a market consistency with Brad White that you get, and you saw it at Kentucky as well. Now it's just, there's been a theme kind of this offseason, this fall camp of, all right, you did more with less at Kentucky. Can you do more with more at Florida? So, kind of going back to it, there's a lot of talent on that side. It's just been, guys, it's crazy. I mean, and you guys were kind of the first going to Texas A&M, kind of the first reminder of what a Florida defense has not been. You go back to 2020 and it was a COVID year. Florida opens up with Ole Miss that year. Okay. Well, we didn't really know because of COVID. It was not a good defensive performance. Okay. It was first game. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Then Florida goes to College Station and walks out of there with a loss. And that was kind of the first, not a shot at A&M, but a shot of, like, this defense is nowhere near where we thought it would be. Florida was coming off a really good 2018, a good 2019, and it was, all right, 2020, take the next step on defense. Instead, they fell off a cliff and haven't recovered since. So no matter what the defensive coordinators were that Billy Napier hired, it's just been a bad defense ever since 2020 for the Florida Gators. So bringing in Brad White, you got plenty of SEC experience that you can fall back on. Now, let's not forget, Jon Sumrall is a defensive coach as well. And as you said, they work together. So I'm interested to see some kind of hybrid defense between the two, or maybe just how much Brad White changes, because look, there's a style of play at Florida you kind of have to play, especially when recruits are looking. They don't want a bunch of zone coverage and sitting and playing safe. They want corners who can be aggressive and go play man. That's what you can recruit in the state of Florida. So there was a lot of zone defense at Kentucky, a lot of cover 3, just don't get beat deep. I don't think we're going to see that as much at Florida, especially because of the athletes that you can get at corner. So I do expect some kind of change for Brad White there. But the biggest kind of change is just being more aggressive up front. It was a front under Patrick Toney and Ron Roberts and Austin Armstrong under Billy Napier that kind of let everything come to them. Now their MO now is to get upfield, strike and get upfield, be a disruptor on the defensive line instead of letting things come to you. And that kind of let the linebackers play downhill a bit more too. And there's plenty of experience, like as you said, coming with those guys. Jon Sumrall said it. Going into spring practice, the defensive line was one of his biggest concerns. Coming out of spring practice, one of the things he feels best about. Just told us this week that they are much deeper there than if you go back and look at how they started this thing. It starts with Brendan Bett. They got two second-year guys in Joseph Mbachu and Jeremiah McLeod coming back. They really expect high things of. And then LJ McCray. I mean, it's a former 5-star. He's got to break out. He's just kind of been that player that's been circled. All right, everything we're hearing is good. It's time. It's time to break out. Mm-hmm. And Jaden Woods comes back in his second year after being all SEC freshman last year. So if you get what you think you can out of LJ McCray, I think it's a really good pass rush, a really good front for Florida. The biggest questions are the secondary. Safety play has been bad for way, way too long for this Gator secondary. They've retooled it because they brought in DJ Coleman as a transfer. Cam Dooley from Kentucky as transfers. Kanye Clark, who probably starts at nickel. And they really retooled that back in through the transfer portal instead of relying on the guys that they had from the previous regime. So Cormani, I think, likely right now start outside with Ben Hanks, a second-year player who's really, really shot up through spring. They get Dijon Johnson back this week from injury, so we'll see how he kind of works himself in. The names for the defense. It's just, can it finally come together with now 2 new leaders? I think Jon Sumrall and Brad White leading that group.
Got it. Well, you just gave us a bunch of names. So if you guys are listening to this, listen to all those names right there. And commit those to memory, because you may not know this Florida roster as well as David does, but going into the season, if you're a fan of the SEC, there were a couple names in there that you mentioned that I'm like, yep, tuck those away, because even though I'm not as well versed in that roster, those guys could pop, and you may be knowing who they are in week 4, right? Like, oh, LJ McCray, look at that guy. I remember David Waters was talking about him. So before we get you out of here, David, I want to talk a little bit about this first season under Jon Sumrall, and we'll get into the schedule a little bit. But as we lead into it here, looking at year 1, okay, I know everybody wants to win the national championship, but realistically, what is a successful season in year 1 under Jon Sumrall? Is that getting to 8-4 and kind of getting the train back on the tracks? Is it one big upset? Is it a 9-3 season? Kind of where's your head at going into 2026 as to what constitutes a successful season?
Look, this schedule's kind of got the reputation that it hasn't been as hard as recent years. Well, it's a 9-game conference schedule that replaces Miami that you did have to play in the last couple of years. Utah that you did have to play. So it's still really tough. I mean, Florida, you look at polls there, still plays Texas, still plays Georgia, still plays Ole Miss, and plays Oklahoma. That's 4 top 10-ish, top 12 teams there. They're on the schedule for Florida, so it's not easy by any means. And I just mentioned 4 teams there, so you kind of go 8-4 as a default if you take those 4 teams into account. We all know, rarely does college football go like you think it does, especially in the coach's first season. So you could kind of see where it's 8-4. You might steal one of those wins, but you might go lose on the road at Missouri. You might lose to South Carolina at home. It could be a roller coaster for a coach's first year. So I think 8-4, talking to a Gator Nation as much as I do social media, Gators Breakdown Plus, it does seem 8-4 is that magic number there where you'd be hard pressed to be too disappointed with that. It would include some good wins, even if it went chalk. If your 4 losses are Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, there's still some good wins in there. And then a lot of people are just kind of hanging it on that week 3 game, his first big game of the season when Florida goes to Auburn.
Yeah, that's a good barometer. And we can take a look at the schedule real quick. I mean, you mentioned it, but yeah, week 3 at Auburn, pivotal. Ole Miss, at Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma stand out, as you mentioned. At Missouri is not easy. Even South Carolina, we had Chris Marlar on recently from Locked On Gamecocks, and South Carolina is another one that they got a lot of talent. It hadn't really panned out for them, but they have guys you've heard of, and their blue chip ratio is pretty good. So it's and then you finish, who knows what Florida State is, but that's a Power 5 opponent. You got 10 or Power 4 nowadays. You got 10. Power 4 opponents there. But I think you pretty much already mentioned it with the Auburn game, but is that the pivotal game? Like if things are going Florida's way, they win that. And if it's going to be a tough season, they lose that? Or what games do you think are real hinge points on this schedule?
Yeah, in a way, Auburn is, because there's so many storylines of it being Alex Golish's first year there as well, and both coaches from the AAC. It makes a lot of sense because of that, but I also hate to say an early season game is a hinge point just because you have time to bounce back from it. We've been fooled by early game results before, all around the country, and it doesn't necessarily mean what the team will be. But I'm telling you, just talking to Gator fans, so many are putting a lot of weight on that Auburn game week 3. I would even say a couple weeks earlier at Missouri. Who knows where Florida's sitting at that point, but Florida hasn't fared too well at Missouri over the years. It's later in the season. You kind of know what you are at that point. They're in that group of teams that Florida's around in the SEC. So, I kind of go to that one as well. The Ole Miss game is interesting because the week before they play Florida in Gainesville, the week before is Ole Miss and LSU. So there's going to be a lot of weight put on that game from their side, a lot of emotion put on that game on their side. Then they got to go on the road the next week to Gainesville. So that's kind of one where for Florida, whether you win or lose to Auburn, it's win. You try and keep the momentum up against a team that had, so much the week before, or you got to bounce back, back against the wall mentality early in the season. So that does set up well for Florida when Ole Miss comes to Gainesville. And then that 3-game stretch at the end, Florida Gator Nation is circling Kentucky, Vandy, and FSU. You better go 3-0. That's kind of non-negotiable for Florida fans right now. It doesn't matter, how well Kentucky has done against Florida in recent years. They got a new head coach as well. Vandy without Pavia, Florida State's in the dumps right now. That's just, if there's one thing about the schedule, you better go 3-0 at the end.
No doubt about it. Well, I won't put you too much on the spot to give us your full prediction. We'll let folks go to Gators Breakdown. But do you think, looking here again, do you think they hit that over in year one under Sumrall, over 7.5?
Yeah, I do have Florida 8-4. Picking where like I said, going kind of earlier, where the actual losses are is kind of just kind of weird, to go with. Hopefully for Florida fans, at some point, some coach turns around the Georgia rivalry. That's the one that just kind of stings right now. Kirby's just owning Florida. Can Sumrall do that in year one? That's a huge ask. Trying to go to Texas, even though Florida beat Texas last year. Got to go on the road to Austin this year for, I think, an improved Texas team. Oklahoma coming to the Swamp. There's usually that one big win Florida has in the Swamp. Go back to Texas last year. Should have never lost that game to Florida, but they did. Florida usually just has, like I said, that one big game that you really shouldn't win at home. Is that the one this year, or is it the Ole Miss game? So that's what I said. I don't think it'll go as chalk as it looks. So I do think it's 8-4. They'll have a win you don't expect. They'll probably have a loss you don't expect as well.
I think that's spot on. That's about where I am too, especially when I was looking at this roster. Again, that blue chip ratio is higher than most people think. So, David, we got to get you out of here, but I got one quick question for you. We ask all our guests who have never been on, do you have a favorite biscuit spot around Jacksonville or around Gainesville? We're Biscuits and SEC. We love Southern culture, Southern food. So is there a diner or maybe even a recipe that is your favorite?
I'll go, and sadly, they're closing down pretty soon. Maple Street Biscuit.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've heard of them.
So they were bought out by Cracker Barrel years ago, and now they've been bought out. Cracker Barrel have sold them. So they've been bought out by another biscuit company. I forget the name off the top of my head. So they're going to kind of live in that realm now, but it's Maple Street. They've been here in Jacksonville. It actually started here in Jacksonville, and then it's in Gainesville as well. But they're now, like I said, going and turning into something else there. But the best spicy gravy that I've ever had. So it's been I'm going to miss it. Hopefully they steal the gravy recipe, at least this new place does. But as long as they got that, I'll be good.
Got it. Well, that is good to know. Well, we're going to do some sleuth work now to figure out who exactly bought them, because now I'd like to know, and if they're saving the recipes and if they're going to get the gravy recipes. So
yeah, it is, man, I forget here. I can, while we got you here.
Let's find it.
I got a second for you.
Let's do some more gumshoe reporting.
Let's see. And like I said, I hope it's acquired by Kentucky Biscuit brand, would transition into Biscuit Belly.
Okay. I feel like I've heard of them too.
Yeah, it's Kentucky-based fast casual breakfast. There we go. So
okay, good to know. Biscuit Belly, for all you guys out there, remember that. Be sure to go check them out. I like that. That's a good suggestion. Well, David, thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate your time today. Everybody, for those of you who do not yet follow David for his coverage of the Gators, go on to X at GatorDave_GB, and then you can find him on social media and on YouTube at Gators Breakdown. He does a fantastic job covering the Florida Gators. So, David, thank you again for coming on. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.